Good morning, happy Monday, happy day one. If you are just now joining and just now watching, I'm not live anymore, you're watching the replay, but I'm super excited that you're here. Say hello, let me know that you're hopping on the replay. I am ready to kick this off. I am so pumped. I've been working hard to get it all organized and ready. I'm gonna make sure really quickly that I'm live in the right place because every once in a while I'm not, and that's not good. So as you're hopping on, say hello. Let's see, I'm just gonna make sure really quickly. And then we're gonna get started. So I'm gonna let you guys know kind of how this is going to work over the next few days. I've got 3 days chocked full of content, learning, helping you get in tune with your own cues, all the things, everything you can think of talking about cravings, with some tools and tips and tricks to navigate them. And then we're gonna pop in with some recipes as well to help kind of swap in for some of your favorites. Okay, I think I am in the right place. So we are going to, let's see, I'm hoping I'll be able to like get comments and stuff too. Okay, let's do this. Day one. I want to preface this workshop with a couple of things. Nutrition is one of the only areas of science where you will find completely opposing things, both supported by research, right? If you think about it, you will find research in support of plant-based diets. You will find research in support of vegetarian diets. We will find research in support of carnivorous, keto, all the things. Like you will find support in any kind of way of eating. The reality is there's no one right way to eat. Bioindividuality is key. We're all different. What works for one person may or may not work for the next person. There's so many moving pieces when it comes to wellness. Diet is just one of them. You've got genetics, you've got your gut health, you have environmental factors, you've got the food piece of it. There are so many different aspects to it. This is just one. My goal is to help you become self-aware, get in tune with your own body and the cues that it gives you. Our bodies are constantly giving us little hints and cues as to what it needs. And the problem is that we have become so out of tune with those cues that we don't know how to respond to them. Or sometimes we don't even recognize them at all as cues. When we mindlessly, and then we fall into these habits of like mindlessly snacking or snacking on things that don't help us reach our goals or don't help us feel good, don't help us work to our maximum capacity. And this mindless snacking can reduce our natural hunger cues and throw off all of our internal balances. So I am going to help you be able to recognize what you need to feel your best while enjoying it along the way. Yes, Bernice. I mean, everything. Like you can literally find research to support any way of eating. And also you will find stuff in support of, or like in opposition to any of it as well. So the key really is bioindividuality. The key is figuring out what works for you and your lifestyle and your goals. I teach food freedom through mindful and intentional fueling without guilt. No emotion attached to food choices. Food is not good. Food is not bad. I mean, food is good, let's be honest. But you know what I mean? Like there is no, like you're not a good person just because you eat a certain way. You're not a bad person just because you eat a certain way. My goal is to help remove those emotions from food. You can learn to have power over your food choices instead of the other way around. And when you learn that, it becomes a situation where you pass on a treat because you decided it wasn't worth it, not because you're being restrictive. It becomes a situation where you say yes to the treat because you chose to, not because you don't have the willpower. And you enjoy it as a treat choice. You enjoy it as a choice, the treat as a choice. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. You enjoy the treat as a choice and you move on. So when I say crush your cravings, when I titled this workshop, Crush Your Cravings, I mean crush the negative feelings that we have learned to associate with certain food choices, if that makes sense. Give me some thumbs up if that makes sense. By the end of this workshop, if you've done the work, you will have started the shift away from attaching those positive and negative undertones to food and towards true food freedom. That is my goal with this. And it's a process, one that doesn't happen overnight or even in a week. And this is one aspect of wellness that I will teach you and work with you on in my Well Nourished Woman one-on-one program, which I'm super, super excited about. Only it'll be completely catered to you and to your bio-individual needs and goals. So here we go. Day one. That was kind of my preface with like the point of all of this and where I'm coming from with it. I should also add in that I have struggled with disordered eating and body image most of my life. So the food freedom is, that aspect of it is really important to me. Not letting food and our food choices dictate so much more. Okay, so let's start. Recognizing our habits and the circumstances and emotions that we specifically attach them to is such a huge piece of this battle. Bio-individuality. That's what I mean when I say that. Like bio-individual means each person is different and there's so many different moving pieces in that. So today we're going to talk about where our cravings come from and why we have them and what they mean. But again, keeping in mind that it's different for every single person. And that's part of what I help you work through in my one-on-one program. So our cravings, they're caused by the regions of the brain that are responsible for memory and pleasure and reward, and imbalances in hormone can cause them. Endorphins are released after you eat them, which can mirror addiction. There's so many different things. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about some of the things that we notice with them, and also what causes that, and then how those lead to different cravings themselves. So when we're going through these, I want you to be thinking about your own circumstances, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of homework as well that you'll do over the next couple of days. That again, the whole idea is helping you become self-aware so that you can then make the shifts that you need to feel how you want to feel. So number one, and these aren't in any specific order necessarily, but the number one thing I want to talk about is being tired, which is fitting because I'm quite tired right now. I got like 2 hours of sleep one night this weekend. I got more last night, but it's one of those things where I feel myself tired. Sleep deprived people tend to eat for pleasure rather than because they're actually in need of more fuel. And there's research that suggests that lack of sleep has similar effects in your brain as a marijuana high. It's the same cell systems in your brain that are activated and create that hunger craving. When we are tired, we get the same biochemical equivalent of getting the munchies, okay? When you're tired, your cortisol levels are also raised. When you're lacking sleep, your cortisol levels are raised, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. So restful sleep is so, so important. And we're going to talk later as well as in my one-on-one program. And I also have like a smaller program that I'm working on just surrounding sleep, and why that's so important. But the idea that I want you to remember is that when you're tired, you have actual biochemical things happening, physiological things that are happening that create this sense of need to actually go eat something. And it's similar to a marijuana high, which most people don't know. Dehydration is another one. Number 2, dehydration. The body can actually get really mixed signals when we're dehydrated, and that's often mistaken for hunger. Now, I want to say, this is really, really important. I, in no way, endorse the idea of drinking water to hide real hunger, okay? I am not of the mindset that when you're hungry, you should just drink water until you're full. That is not at all what I am saying here. But being properly hydrated is so important for all of your cells to function properly. And so paying attention to that can really help you be in tune with your body in other ways. And our bodies do tend to have some of the same sensations when we're thirsty as when we're hungry. So just paying attention to that and noticing when you've had, how much water you've had, when was the last time you drank some water, you'll start to be able to recognize which of those that actually is. Again, in no way, shape, or form suggesting that you just drink water when you're feeling hungry, but oftentimes drinking a little bit of water can help you kind of recognize those signals, and we'll talk more about that. But tired and being dehydrated are two very common reasons that we have cravings. One that we probably, number 3, the one that we tend to think of when you're trying to like break down your cravings is being nutrient deficient. There's a lot of mixed science on this one. And again, nutrition is one of those areas where you're going to have a lot of mixed science. But being specifically talking about cravings and nutrient deficiency is another one where you have a lot of mixed science. You may have heard that if you're craving chocolate, it means that you're low on magnesium. Or if you're craving meat or cheese, that you are low in iron or calcium. You may have heard of pica, which is common in pregnant women. And that's when you crave non-nutritive things like dirt and ice. I've even heard of people craving cornstarch when in this situation. And studies have been shown to support that and also shown to not support that at all, that it actually is related to these nutrient levels and also that it's not. So again, bioindividuality, lots of varying factors, but nutrient deficiency can definitely be something that is indicative. I mean, cravings can be indicative of a nutrient deficiency. We also think of that a lot when we think of salty foods. So being insufficient in sodium is going to create this desire to have sodium. It's very possible, right? It's very, very possible. It's not probable. Being insufficient in sodium levels is actually really rare in developed parts of the world. It can definitely create those salty desires, but excessive sodium is more common than insufficient sodium. There is sodium in so many different foods, and you don't necessarily even notice it. You don't necessarily taste that saltiness because of all the other things that are in those foods, but there is hidden salt in almost any packaged food that you're going to come across. And so we're much more likely to actually have too much sodium in our diets than too little, but it is possible. And I sure and craved chewing on cardboard boxes. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I've heard that one, Bernice. I would be curious what you did in those situations to actually handle that craving. That's fascinating. I've heard the ice a lot. I've heard dirt. Cardboard is fascinating. So again, eating salty foods sometimes, or having that craving for salty foods, can potentially be because you are lacking sodium. It's not likely though. The more probable reason is actually indicative of a preference for saltiness that we've just created by constantly eating these foods with extra salt. So when you continue to eat foods that have extra salt in them, your body starts to want more of that. And so if you're craving salt, it's a good idea. We'll talk all about how to actually the solutions for all of these cravings. But that's just something to keep in mind. Number 4 is probably, am I on number 4? I don't even know. I didn't actually number these. I'm trying to remember though. The next one is being bored. Okay. You're likely aware of the habit of eating when you're bored. Bored is an emotion. Boredom is an emotion just like sadness, just like loneliness. Boredom is essentially the emotion tied to an alert telling us the fact that for some reason we can't or we won't engage in some kind of meaningful activity. And we often respond to that emotion by turning to foods. It's kind of our find something to do solution. And it's a temporary pleasure. So we'll talk about what that can look like to shift that. But being aware of that is something that we're going to work on. Stress is the next one. You've likely heard of your fight or flight response. Our bodies want to make sure that we have the energy to run away from danger if we're in that situation. And there's a whole physiological process that happens when we're under stress. And that is typically, when you're speaking evolutionarily, a quick one and done. It's a temporary thing. But in today's world, we have this chronic stress situation, especially in the world that we're in right now. And what that means is that your body constantly has these higher levels of cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And constant high levels of cortisol tell your liver to release sugar for energy, right? Cortisol is your stress hormone. That's the fight response, where your body is like, we gotta handle this danger. I need the energy to do it. I need the sugar into my blood so that I can process that energy and actually use that energy. So when you have constant high levels of cortisol, your liver is constantly saying, get this sugar out, I've got to do this. And that's going to impact your insulin effectiveness and your overall blood sugar stability, okay? That's going to create cravings. Your body is like, I need more food because I need to handle these stressful situations, and you get all these imbalances, okay? So our cravings from quarantine, from this whole like craziness that's happening, could easily be a combination of stress, boredom. There's so many different factors in this, new habits that we've created, which we're going to talk about next. And again, it's all of these moving pieces that are going to be different for each person, depending on your situation, depending on your genetics, depending on your environment, so many different moving pieces. So next we're going to talk about habits. Do you have, and I would love for you to comment and tell me these things. Do you have a routine that just naturally involves snacking? Every time you walk by your pantry, do you go grab something just out of habit? Do you go grab some chips or some crackers? Do you walk by the fridge and immediately open it and grab some grapes or, whatever's in there, grab some raisins? Is it just a habit where I do this and I naturally grab a snack? I naturally reach for a snack. Every time you sit down to the computer, do you grab a snack and multitask? Like, is that part of your work environment where I'm sitting, I need to have something and snacking, and I'm going to multitask? When we do things repetitively, it becomes a habit, whether we are creating that habit on purpose or not. And if that's the case, before you know it, your body is naturally craving these things simply because you've been telling it that that's what it should do. That's what we do. This is what we do. This is when I snack. This is what I do. This is when I snack. And it may or may not be intentional. That's actually something that we will work on in my programs, is making it an intentional connection. But being aware of that is very important. And then the last couple things that I want to talk about, and then I'm going to give you your action items for the day. Yes, Whitney, like and it's such an easy thing to come into too. And I actually personally, tell you a little story. I first realized that I did this when I did kind of a physical reset for myself. I knew that I just needed to like reset some of my habits. I felt bloated. I just had this whole like physiological thing happening that I wanted to kind of reset. So I did a little food reset for myself. And that was the first time I noticed, like, I just eat every time I walk by the kitchen. Like, every time I walk by the kitchen, my natural habit is to go to the pantry and just grab something quick. And I didn't know that I had that habit until I was paying attention to it. And then I was like, oh man, I'm not actually hungry. I just have this like routine of walking by and grabbing something, and I didn't actually need that. So that awareness is what we're going to work on. And part of that also is when we're talking about like parties and socialization, or socializing, which may or may not be happening right now where you're at, or it may be happening in some different variation of what has happened in the past. But do you notice that, let's see, Bernice, I just saw your comment. Yes, when I get the kids a snack, I get myself one too, even though I don't really want anything. Total habit, right? That's just part of the routine. And it's something that like is so easy to do naturally. But when we bring our awareness to it, we can shift it. And it's not a bad thing, right? We're not attaching any emotions to it. It's not that when you grab a snack, that's a bad thing. You might need that snack. It might be a good option for you, but it might not. And so the whole point is bringing our awareness to it so that we can get rid of the habits that don't serve us and create habits that do serve us. When you are at gatherings, social events, parties, whatever the case may be, do you notice that you have specific cravings or you reach for specific foods when you're at these events? We often also associate socializing with food, just in general, right? Like you think of parties and you're like, oh, the food. Like, oh, there's going to be such a spread, right? And you just naturally have this association to it versus the company that you're going to be spending time with, the experiences, the memories. Those two things are often they just go together. So, and oftentimes, depending on what it is, we associate specific types of foods with it, right? When you're thinking summer, it's still very hot where I am. So we are still kind of in that summer mode of activities. Like you might think of going to the beach and having chips and fresh fruit and like more junk food type things because those are easy to grab and bring with you. If you're at a party, you might think more of like the veggie dips and all the dips and creams and all those kinds of things that are associated with specific events. Again, being aware of these things and being aware of our natural tendencies and habits personally can help us prepare ourselves to do nothing other than best serve our goals. No emotions attached again. But the last thing that I want to make sure that I hit on is that sometimes we have cravings because we're just actually hungry. And when you have cravings because you're actually just hungry, you should eat. You should eat food. I teach food freedom, okay? I teach being intentional and being mindful about how we fuel our bodies, but there is nothing wrong with eating when you're hungry. Recognizing when you're actually hungry, though, is really important. When you are actually hungry, anything will suffice, okay? You won't be hungry for like one specific food where you're like, oh man, I just need a burger. Or like, oh man, I could really go for some ice cream or chocolate right now. That's totally different. That's like a craving that probably has something else lying underneath it. Actual hunger is like, I'm physically hungry and I could eat anything right now. Anything would satiate that feeling and I would be happy with it, okay? So recognizing that piece is huge, but sometimes we have cravings because we are just flat out hungry. So those are the main types of cravings, or the main reasons why cravings creep up on us occasionally, and sometimes it hits us like a ton of bricks, and sometimes it's like, oh, little by little by little, here it comes. So day one is all about recognizing our own individual cravings and what causes them in our individual lives, because again, everybody's going to be different with this. So your homework for today, what I want you guys to do to start yourselves in this process is track. And some of you are going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't track my food. I don't count calories. I can't. That is not what this is. This is not counting calories. This is not counting macros. This is not measuring food. We're not weighing things. That is not the point of this. Okay. You're going to track your meals and your snacks and your cravings for the next couple days purely to bring awareness to when you have them, what you're craving, and start paying attention to maybe why you have those specific cravings. Okay, so what I want you to pay attention to, and it's just for these next few days, and then we're gonna talk about, when you do this in my program, it's gonna be a little bit more extended because the longer you do this, the more indicative you have of like, was that a one-off or was that actually my norm? But I want you to pay attention to a few things. And again, you're not trying to necessarily change anything. Like if you notice that you have a craving and you want to go grab something, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm purely saying this is what I have. This is the craving that I have. This is the situation that I'm in. This is how I'm feeling about it. And writing it down so that you can then start looking at patterns in yourself. So here are the things that I want you to kind of pay attention to. What is happening when you notice that you have a craving? What's happening around you? What activities are you doing? What are you feeling physically? Do you actually feel physically hungry? Because you're tracking, you will be able to look and say, when was my last meal? What was it? When was the last time I drank water? Have I had enough water? Am I craving specific foods, or do I feel like anything could suffice? Do I want something salty, sweet, fatty, etc.? Or do I not feel physically hungry, but I just feel like I want something? Like I'm kind of munchy right now. What is it that would make me feel better about this? But then also, what are you feeling emotionally? Are you stressed? Are you anxious? Are you bored? What are you looking to accomplish with what need is this craving hoping to meet? Okay. Are you, are you bored? Are you stressed out? I already said those things, but again, just bringing that back to that. What is it that you're hoping to do by fueling this craving? Are you hoping to de-stress? Are you hoping to calm yourself down? Is it just something to do? And then are you doing anything else while you're eating? Are you working at your computer? Are you driving? Like, are you just looking, all of the things that we've talked about, pay attention to those and write them down. That is all you're doing. Track what you're eating for the next couple of days, but I want you to pay more attention to the situation surrounding the craving and then like whether or not you actually go eat the thing that you're craving, or whether or not you have more than you would normally have. We're not looking at calories, we're not looking at macros, we're not looking at counting, weighing, all of those things. Purely becoming self-aware of the situation that you're in. Okay? So that is all for right now. That is day 1. I hope that it was useful in some way, shape, or form for you. Give me your thoughts down below, and I will check in later. I will put a little hard post up that reminds you what the homework is so that you have a graphic to like view with it. And then tomorrow there will be another little check-in post. Wednesday, we are going to talk more about what those cravings mean for you specifically. Like, what can you do if you recognize that you have this specific craving in this specific situation? What are some ways that we can shift those based on your goals, okay? So I hope everybody has a great day. Happy Monday. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you guys all soon.